in Kenya and the concept of emerging pollutants in part 1, now we will move to part 2 of our lecture, which will focus on tackling emerging pollution challenges in Kenya. In this lecture, we will start by exploring which pollutants are most prevalent in Kenya and where they are typically found. Next, we will look at specific case studies that illustrate the impact of these pollutants on Kenyan communities and ecosystems. We will examine how Kenya is addressing these issues through some policies, regulations, and environmental programs. We will also discuss the obstacle Kenya faces in managing these pollutants. Finally, we will consider some possible solutions and strategy for overcoming the challenges associated with emerging pollutants in Kenya. Therefore, Kenya, one of the East Africa's largest economies, is facing a growing pollution challenges driven by three main factors, and that is rapid urbanization, industrialization growth, and population growth. In urbanization, for example, Kenya's urban population is rapidly growing at a rate of 4.3 annually. This puts pressure on infrastructure and also creating significant environmental stress in the urban areas. Also, as industry grows, so do the byproducts and pollutants, which will require careful management to avoid environmental damage. Additionally, Kenya population continues to expand without a proper plan on the infrastructure for pollution management, whereby this will create additional wastes, and this will also increase the demand on resources, which will require careful management to minimize environmental harm. The major pollution sources in Kenya includes air, water, and plastic wastes. For example, the capital city Nairobi is struggling with poor air quality caused by traffic congestion, waste burning, and industrial emissions. As seen in these photos, the first photo illustrates traffic congestion, highlighting a common urban challenges in Kenya. The second photo captures waste burning near residential areas with children walking home from school in close proximity, emphasizing the health risks. The third image shows industrial emissions, which showcasing the environmental impact of industrial activities. Therefore, these combined factors present serious challenges, but they also highlight areas where targeted effort could have a meaningful impact on reducing pollution and improving environmental health. Before we look at specific case studies of emerging pollutants in Kenya, I would like to introduce ourselves to the second task. For this, please take 1 to 2 hours to conduct some literature and internet search to find additional examples of emerging pollutants. Choose one of specific case to focus on. Look for details about specific pollutants involved and the impact they had on local ecosystems. Once we are back, we will discuss some of your findings as we continue. Now let's explore some case studies from key regions in Kenya. For example, in Nairobi, Lake Naivasha, Lake Victoria, and Mombasa. Pollution in these areas comes from various sources, which include industrial waste, agricultural discharge, and urban pollutants. The key pollutants impacting these areas include pharmaceuticals, pesticides, heavy metals, microplastics, and personal care products. Actually, these pollutants pose a unique challenges to the environment and public health in each region. Therefore, despite ongoing efforts, more research, stronger regulations, and increased public awareness are crucial to tackling these issues. The following slide will highlight the notable cases which will illustrate Kenya challenges in managing emerging pollutants. Let's look to our first case study from Nairobi, which will focus on the pollution of Nairobi River. This river is a vital water source for the city. This river also receives wastewater from households, hospitals, and industries, and is reported to be contaminated by a range of pollutants, including pharmaceuticals like antibiotics, painkillers, and antiretroviral drugs, as well as personal care products like shampoos and lotions, and even household chemicals. Poor waste disposal practices, for example, the improper disposal of expired drugs, hospital waste, and domestic wastewater, along with ineffective treatment systems and illegal dumping, contribute to this pollutant entering into the river untreated. For example, research studies have reported pharmaceuticals and endocrine disrupted chemicals in this river, particularly at the downstream of hospitals and residential areas. The presence of antibiotics and antiretroviral drugs were also linked to the development of antibiotic resistance in microbial communities. This Nairobi River is also an important water source for irrigation, which raises concern about pollutants entering the food chain. This chemical can contaminate drinking water and disrupt aquatic ecosystem, leading to issues like antibiotic resistance and harmful and hormonal imbalances. In short, in this case study illustrates the serious environmental and health risk posed by pharmaceutical and personal care products when wastewater is poorly managed. Let's now examine a case study on heavy metal contamination in Lake Naivasha. Lake Naivasha is a freshwater lake in Kenya, Rift Valley. Normally, Lake Naivasha is surrounded by large-scale horticultural farms that rely on chemical pesticides and fertilizers. Drainage from these farms carries this chemical directly into the lake, contributing to a higher pollution levels. For example, research studies have detected elevated level of heavy metal, particularly lead, mercury, and cadmium in this lake, especially near the flower farms. Additionally, pesticides have also been reported to be found in both water and sediment of this lake. Therefore, this contamination threatens the lake biodiversity, especially the fish species that are crucial for local community. It also raises health concern for those people around who consume fish or water from this lake. Therefore, prolonged exposure to this pollutant could severely affect both the ecosystem and public health. This case emphasizes the impact of agricultural runoff on freshwater ecosystem, which highlighting the urgent need for the Kenyan government for sustainable farming practices to safeguard vital resources such as Lake Naivasha. The third case focuses on pesticide residues in the Lake Victoria basins, where agricultural practices are affecting one of Africa's most important water resources. Lake Victoria is the Africa's largest freshwater lake. It supports extensive agricultural activity, including sugarcane, tea, and vegetable farming. Unfortunately, the use of chemical pesticide in these farming activities leads to runoff, which degrades the water quality and harms aquatic life. This lake, as you can see in the first photo, it is shared by three countries in East Africa, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. The main pollutants here are pesticides, including organochlorines, DDT, linden, endosulfan, malathion, and pyrethroid, where many of these chemicals used in pesticides are banned in the European countries and the United States of America. For example, research studies have reported pesticide residue in both the lake water and fish, particularly near areas with heavy agricultural activities. These pesticides have also been reported in some studies that they can persist in the environment and bioaccumulate in fish. Therefore, this contamination threatens the lake ecosystem, reduces the fish population due to death as seen in the second photo, and also poses health risk to people who depend on fish for food. It also affects the local fishing industry, which is a crucial part of the region's economy. In short, Here, this case emphasizes the urgent need for Kenya to improve pesticide management to protect the lake ecosystem, safeguard public health, and preserve the livelihood, especially for those people who who depend on this lake. The fourth case examines microplastic pollution in Kenya coastal areas, particularly around Mombasa and the Indian Ocean coastline. Mombasa, Kenya's largest coastal city, serves as a major hub for shipping and tourism. However, widespread plastic use and inadequate waste management have resulted in significant plastic waste buildup along the coast and in the water. In this case, the primary reported pollutants are microplastic and other plastic debris, which accumulate along the coast and in the marine environment. For example, research studies have revealed high concentration of microplastics in coastal waters and sediments around Mombasa. Marine species, including fish and shellfish, are ingesting this microplastic, which raises concern about the pollutant transfer through the food chain. Therefore, this pollution disrupts marine ecosystem, poses health risks to humans who consume contaminated seafood, and threatens the tourism industry, which is a vital industry for coastal communities in Kenya. The most important thing here in this case is that it emphasizes the urgent need for the Kenyan government to improve waste management and plastic pollution prevention to protect marine life, human health, and the tourism sector. The fifth case is antibiotic resistance in the Athi River Basin, an area heavily affected by pollution in Kenya. The Athi River flows through Nairobi and several nearby industrial zones where key pollutants include antibiotic, antiretroviral drugs, industrial waste, and heavy metals have been reported. Much of the wastewater from urban areas and industries is either untreated or poorly treated. This allows antibiotic and other pollutants to enter into this river. For example, some research studies have reported that antibiotic residue in the water are contributing to the growth of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. This resistance poses a significant public health risk, especially for communities that depend on this river for irrigation and livestock watering. The contamination also affects downstream ecosystem and agricultural production. Therefore, this case it clearly emphasizes the urgent need for improvement of the wastewater in treatment and pollution control to protect both the public health and the environment in the Athi River. To address these pollution challenges, Kenya has implemented several environmental efforts and policy responses. One of the most significant being the establishment of the National Environmental Management Authority, which is also referred to as NEMA. This organization plays a crucial role in regulating and enforcing environmental policies across the country. The key responsibility of NEMA includes monitoring industrial emissions and waste management, conducting environmental impact assessment for the new development projects to ensure environmental sustainability, and also to promote sustainable practices in sectors like agriculture, construction, and manufacturing to reduce environmental degradation. Another key policy effort is the plastic bag ban, which was implemented in 2017. This ban was one of the strictest in the world, with heavy fines and jail terms for those found producing, selling, or using plastic bags. The impact of this policy has been very transformative, resulting in a significant reduction in plastic pollution in urban areas, along the coastal line, and in national parks. The dramatic decrease in plastic bag littering had led to improved conditions for wildlife and marine ecosystem, as plastic bag was substantially reduced but not completely. The third response to address pollution is focusing on Kenya's progress in renewable energy. Kenya is one of the leading producers of geothermal energy in Africa, which generates about 47% of its electricity from geothermal sources. Additionally, the Lake Turkana wind power project, one of the largest in Africa, has significantly boosted Kenya renewable energy capacity. These initiatives are key to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, lowering dependence on fossil fuels, and positioning Kenya as a leader in sustainable energy while tackling environmental pollution. Another key initiative is the Nairobi River Rehabilitation Project, which aimed at tackling the river's severe pollution. The key action here include removing solid waste, regulating industrial discharges to meet environmental standards, and running public awareness campaigns on proper waste disposal. This effort has led to improved water quality in some areas and better health outcomes for community along the river. Overall, Kenya is making a significant progress in addressing pollution and promoting sustainability through such policies and initiatives. However, further efforts are needed to enhance implementation, strengthening enforcement mechanisms, and also to address emerging environmental challenges comprehensively. Before we continue with the challenges of emerging pollutants in Kenya, let's take some time for our third task. I encourage you to discuss the challenges posed by emerging pollutants in Kenya and explore strategies to address them effectively. Focus on the specific pollution issues we have discussed earlier, their impacts on the environment and public health, and the practical solutions to manage them. So take your time to thoroughly examine both the challenges and potential solutions. Now let's take a closer look at some key challenges Kenya faces in managing emerging pollutants. First, Kenya lacks a robust regulatory framework for emerging pollutants. This means many of these contaminants are not addressed by existing environmental levels. So there is limited oversight on their production, use, and disposal. Therefore, without clear regulation, it becomes very challenging to monitor and control the release of these pollutants into the environment. Second, most of wastewater treatment plants in Kenya are not well equipped to remove emerging pollutants, like pharmaceuticals, pesticides, and microplastics. As a result, these pollutants can end up in the river, lakes, and oceans, which then threatening ecosystem and human health. Third, the data on the presence and impact of emerging pollutants in Kenya is very limited, mainly due to lack of research infrastructure and funding for environmental monitoring. Therefore, without sufficient information on the prevalence and effect of these pollutants, it is very difficult to create policy and implement protective measures. Lastly, public awareness on the dangers of emerging pollutants is still very low in Kenya. This lack of awareness often leads to improper disposal practices, which only further contribute to environmental pollution. Therefore, addressing these challenges require better policy, improved waste management, and more research and public education to the communities. Therefore, to tackle the challenges posed by emerging pollutants in Kenya, several key actions are essentials. First, to establish a nationwide monitoring program to track pollutants in water, soil, and air. This data will help identify problem areas, and also it will guide us on coming up with the proper interventions. Second, there is need to invest in long-term research to understand the health and environmental impacts of these pollutants and enabling the development of effective science-based solutions. Third, to raise and enhance public awareness about the dangers of emerging pollutants and also to promote proper disposal and treatment practices to reduce their impacts. Finally, there is need to create and enforce clear regulation to prevent and manage pollution at its source. Therefore, by combining these efforts and fostering collaboration among government, industry, researchers, and the public, Kenya can build a cleaner, safer environment for all. To conclude in today's session, the urgent need to address emerging pollutants in Kenya cannot be ignored. These pollutants are harming the environment and public health with a potential global consequences if left unaddressed. Here is a call to action for all stakeholders. For example, the government need to play a crucial role by strengthening regulation and ensuring they are effectively enforced such that strong policies and oversight can make a lasting impact in controlling pollution. For industries, they need to adopt sustainable practices and also reducing harmful wastes. By making these changes, industry can help significantly reduce pollution at its source. Also, community cannot be left behind. They have a role to play such that by increasing public awareness and promoting eco-friendly behaviors will help shift everyday practices towards a more sustainable future. Finally, Kenya has the potential to lead the way in the global south by implementing innovative and collaborative solutions. With a proactive approach, Kenya can set a new benchmark for effective solution management, showcasing leadership in environmental protection and sustainable development. This environmental challenge requires collective effort, but together we can build a healthier and more sustainable future for Kenya and beyond. This brings us to the end of part 2 and also end of our today's lecture. And now I would like to thank you all for your time, your attention, and your active participation in today's sessions. Have a nice time ahead, and thank you once again.